năm là cùng lắm, đến tất cả chuẩn bị trước, hoặc rồi 1/10.
Quán triệt các bạn rất rõ ràng những cái chuyện như thế. Đây thì bên đấy thôi. Hôm nay thì xong hôm nay phải
số của em anh cho anh nữa đâu, còn đặt gì em cho xếp nhiều em đấy. Các bạn là hoa đây hoa tặng đi. Hai ba.
easy to achieve. Learning to love yourself is the greatest love world. The space of
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the event Bridges, Dialogues Toward a Culture of Peace. First of all, we would like to send our warm welcome and sincere thanks to all of the participants presenting here today. And please allow us to say hello and respectfully wish all of you good health.
It is a great honor for the Diplomatic Academy of Vietnam to welcome all of you to the 4th ASEAN event series, Bridges, Dialogues Toward a Culture of Peace, and to welcome the visit of President Professor Romano Prodi, former Prime Minister of Italy.
Especially, President Romano will be the keynote speaker for the topic Politics and Peace, Worldwide Cooperations in the Age of Globalization in our event. The event today is co-organized by the International Peace Foundation, so-called IPF, the Ministry of Education and Training of Vietnam, and the Diplomatic Academy of Vietnam.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the aim of Bridges, as its founder, Mr. Uwe Morawetz, has put is to facilitate and strengthen dialogue and communications in order to promote understanding and trust. And we believe that, with all of the people here today, surely with that idea in mind to strive for a peaceful world, and it goes perfectly in line with the above mentioned topic.
Also, it is a very great honor for DAV students, teachers, professors, researchers, scholars, and staff to warmly welcome President Romano Prodi to the Academy. And now it is our honor to introduce our guest today. President Professor Romano Prodi, former Prime Minister of Italy, former President of the European Commission and the United Nations Special Envoy for the Sahel.
Mrs. Flavia Franzoni, President Romano's spouse.
Mr. Uwe Morawetz, Founding Chairman of the International Peace Foundation.
Mr. Trần Bá Việt Dũng, Director General of the International Cooperation Department at the Ministry of Education and Training.
Ambassador Dr. Dat Đình Quý, President of the Diplomatic Academy of Vietnam, Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Also, we would like to send our sincere thanks to hats, ambassadors, officials and staff from diplomatic mission offices, international organizations, and representatives from ministries, industries, universities, research institutes of Vietnam for being here today.
And last but not least, we would like to introduce all of the students presenting here today. Thank you.
And now, it is our honor to invite Mr. Uwe Morawetz, Founding Chairman of the International Peace Foundation, to deliver a speech, please.
Welcome to the 4th ASEAN event series, Bridges, Dialogues Towards a Culture of Peace. Bridges is facilitated by the International Peace Foundation, a non-political and non-religious foundation under the common patronage of 21 Nobel Peace Prize laureates based in Vienna. The events are hosted in cooperation with the Ministry of Education and Training and various local partners, including some of the country's major universities. And I would like to thank the Diplomatic Academy of Vietnam for hosting our event today. Having started in November, Bridges has been continuously held in Vietnam, involving the participation of Nobel laureates for peace, physics, chemistry, medicine, and economics, as well as with other keynote speakers, including Professor Hanoi and now the former President of the European Commission, Romano Prodi. The 4th ASEAN series of Bridges follows the series of 450 Bridges events which the International Peace Foundation has already hosted in Thailand, the Philippines, Malaysia and Cambodia since 2003, as an independent contribution to the Decade for a Culture of Peace and Nonviolence initiated and promoted by the United Nations General Assembly. The pluralistic program of Bridges highlights the International Peace Foundation's intercultural and transdisciplinary approach towards peace. The Foundation does not take sides, but acts as a mediator by creating an independent platform for dialogue where representatives of science, politics, economy, culture, the media and youth can meet, share their viewpoints, listen to each other, and find mutual ways of understanding and cooperation. Therefore, the Foundation itself is a bridge and a facilitator between different language groups in our divided societies where politicians speak another language than artists, and business and religious leaders another one than scientists. In a highly interdependent world, problems cannot be solved by either one of these language groups only, but by working together. After the success of the Bridges programs in Thailand, the Philippines, Malaysia and Cambodia, the International Peace Foundation has been invited by other ASEAN countries to build further bridges towards peace and international understanding by expanding its program in Southeast Asia to stimulate intellectual, scientific and cultural exchange in the region. The fourth ASEAN Bridges series therefore continuously takes place in Vietnam from November until March, comprising events with Nobel laureates from all fields. The Nobel laureates have visited the region not all at once, but separately to conduct public lectures, seminars, workshops and dialogues hosted by local institutions during the continuous periods of 5 months. The aim of Bridges is to facilitate and strengthen dialogue and communication between societies in Southeast Asia with their multiple cultures and faiths, as well as with peoples in other parts of the world, to promote understanding and trust. By enhancing science, technology and education as a basis for peace and development, the events may lead to better cooperation for the advancement of peace, freedom and security in the region with the active involvement of the young generation. ASEAN's key to the future. This is why Bridges has not been designed as a one-time event, but as a continuous process of synergies to make a series of events a sustainable success for Vietnam and for Southeast Asia as a whole. Honorary Chairman of Bridges, His Excellency Prime Minister Nguyen Thanh Xuan. The Ministry of Education and Training, the Diplomatic Academy of Vietnam, as well as our other partners and sponsors who have enabled us to make Bridges a reality. I would like to say thank you to everyone present today for being a part of this program. May it help us to facilitate a new culture of peace through dialogue, transcending its definition as merely the absence of war or armed conflict into a new definition, where the basis for peace is education. As the Bridges series of events now comes to its close in Vietnam and will be continued in the years ahead in other ASEAN countries such as Singapore, Indonesia, Laos, Brunei and Myanmar, we thank you and your wife that you have taken the time out of your very busy schedule to come to Vietnam to support the events. We look forward to your keynote speech and to your important contribution to build Bridges. Welcome again, President Prodi and Flavia.
And now I would like to invite Ambassador Dr. Dak Dinh Quy, President of the Diplomatic Academy of Vietnam, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, to deliver the speech. Please.
Professor Romano Prodi, Mr. Uwe Morawetz, Ambassador, Head of Diplomatic Mission in Hanoi, Rector of Universities, and Head of Research Institutes, ladies and gentlemen, the Diplomatic Academy of Vietnam is delighted and honored to host this fourth ASEAN Bridges event in Hanoi today. On behalf of the Academy, I would like to extend my warmest welcome and sincere thanks to all distinguished guests for your time and support to this dialogue event and to our Academy in general. Especially, I would like to welcome and thank Professor Romano Prodi, President of African Union, UN Peacekeeping Panel, Mr. Uwe Morawetz, Founding Chairman of International Peace Foundation, leaders of the Ministers of Education and Training of Vietnam, of various universities, institutes, and government agencies in Hanoi, and many sponsors and supporters who are wholeheartedly dedicated not only to this event, but also to the entire ASEAN British series. I would like to express my deep gratitude and appreciation to their effort and lofty missions. Ladies and gentlemen, I share Mr. Morawetz's views that ASEAN event series, British Dialogues Toward a Culture of Peace, which are initiated and facilitated by the International Peace Foundation, have achieved major successes in many ASEAN countries over the recent years. Providing a platform for dialogue and communication, this event series have helped to strengthen the links among diverse societies and peoples of ASEAN, as well as between them and peoples in other parts of the world. With the participation of many Nobel laureates and other keynote speakers and artists, the event series has also enhanced many educational systems in ASEAN countries, which in turn can serve as a solid foundation for a long-lasting peace. Thanks to the facilitation of the International Peace Foundation, today our Academy is honored to receive Professor Romano Prodi as our keynote speaker in ASEAN British Series. And in a couple of minutes, we will have the chance to have Professor Prodi to give a keynote speech on political and peace, worldwide cooperation in the age of globalization at our event. And this inspiring topic, I believe, is in line with the ongoing debate around the world about peace and cooperation, especially in the aftermath of the global economic crisis and newly emerging security issues, which crave strong attention and cooperation in the international community. Ladies and gentlemen, striving for peace and contributing to the struggle of the world people for peace, independence, democracy, and social progress have always been the defining objectives of Vietnam foreign policy. Advancing through the long histories of national defense and construction, the Vietnamese people profoundly understand and cherish the values of peace. For thousands of years, our nation has been nurturing a peaceful culture which still defines as our foreign relations today. Thus, we find a lot of commonalities among our foreign policy perspectives, the objectives of International Peace Foundation, and Professor Prodi's keynote topic about peace and cooperation in the age of globalization. We are pleased to learn that British Dialogue series are also held in various ASEAN countries for the same purpose of peace cultivation. ASEAN is well known over the world for its ASEAN Way, a unique peaceful approach to conflict management through norms and institution building. Currently, regional countries are working toward the goal of ASEAN community by 2015, in which Southeast Asian neighbors will live together in a region of peace. Being an ASEAN member, Vietnam is happy to be part of that counter dialogue for peace. The diplomatic peace and security study and the capacity of network with two research institutions around the region, diplomat and external relations officer for the Vietnamese government and society are responsible for preserving the peaceful environment surrounding our country in the near future. The British Dialogue is partly helpful for the Academy and its students in carrying out our own mission to the country as a homework in the entire ASEAN British series. I thank you very much indeed. And now, without further ado, I would like to invite
Look, can you take off my jacket? Okay, thank you. Authorities, professors, and my dear students, I want to thank, first of all, the International Peace Foundation for having organized this, and the Minister of Education and the Diplomatic Academy of Vietnam for having permitted me to deliver this speech. This is not a speech, this will be a conversation. I shall be brief, and I want a dialogue with you because, of course, sorry if I skip you the first time, my dialogue with the students, you know, because they will be the leaders of Vietnam tomorrow, you know, and so they deserve a special attention. My scheme of this conversation will be on politics and peace and cooperation that is necessary among different countries. Let us start from a very simple statement, you know. Everybody of you knows that the 18th and 19th centuries were the European centuries, dominated by the European countries. The 20th century, progressively, starting from the First World War, was the American century. And in theory, even the 21st century, it was supposed to be the American century. But now, everybody is saying that it's the Asian century. And what is happening? Why this change? And it's quite interesting to reflect, first of all, on that. What has changed? What is changing? It's clear that if you remember 20 years ago, Thomas Scholar wrote an article, not a book, and the title was At the Hand of History. What was this meaning? That the American power was so strong, so dominating the world, that the history was ending. 20 years later, we are in the beginning of history again, you know. And so we have, first of all, to think what and why this happened. Generally, these things happen because of change in the economic and political reality, and also because of mistakes done by politicians and leaders. And in this case, it's clear. We have from one side the Asian growth, not only Chinese, but Asian growth, and from the other side, the big mistake of the Iraqi war. The Iraqi war was supposed to be the seal of the American power. It was supposed to be a very simple event to settle the Middle East uneasiness and to go on for quite a few weeks. I was at that moment president of the European Commission, and so I was testifying every day the problem how this was mounting, you know, and nothing was like that. Nothing was like that, and this was the beginning of the change. A deep, profound change. Let us keep in mind a couple of figures, not many. I don't want to invade you, aggress you with figures, but something is useful. In the 50s, after the First World War, American US GDP was around 50% of world GDP, and US plus Canada plus Europe, they were 68% of European GDP. Now, US American GDP around 20%, Europe around 20%, and so Canada 3-4%. So altogether, instead of 68%, they are half of it, almost, a little more than half of it. And this is a fantastic, impressive change in less than half of century of age. But we have this. But at the same time, I go back to the 50s. United States, they had almost the same share of military expenditure that they had of world GDP. Let's say 45-50% of military expenditure. Now, United States with 20% military GDP, they still have more than 40% of world military expenditure. So we came and we explained a lot of this change from a situation of, let's say, some sort of equal distribution between GDP and military cost to a completely different distribution now, in which you have still 45% of military expenditure and 20% of world GDP. You now explain why all these things bring to a change from what is commonly called a passage from monopolar to multipolar world. Let's say a world dominated by only one country, let's say the end of history, to a world in which you have much more paritarian situation. Clearly, what is going on in the economic field is not going on in the military field, as I told before. The United States, by far, is the most powerful power in the world, and the cost of military expenditure explain you clearly how it is the situation. But clearly that is not easy in this situation to keep the budget in order. And now you explain, at least in part, is not only the military part of it, but you have an explanation how is difficult the budget equilibrium inside the United States. You have an historical perspective of the debate that is going on since 6 months inside United States. Let's say the famous cliff, how to put the budget in order, the difference between Republicans and Democrats. This is, of course, also a consequence of the internal expenditure, but also a consequence of the big military engagement. Don't forget that in this moment, the United States, they have 1,600 military bases abroad, small and big, and 350,000 soldiers abroad. So it's a very heavy burden that the United States keeps for all the Western world. And if you compare Europe with the same GDP of the United States, the military expenditure is 1/4 or 1/5 of that. So it's really a different burden that you have in the world today. And this is from the military point of view. From the growth, you had the great change, starting symbolically from 1978, but a little later, in real facts, China and all Asian countries started to develop in a very different way from all other countries in the world. And now this is changing the reality. I don't want, I repeat, to give you too many figures to tell you, but what is, after the crisis, what is the reality today? The world today, how is going on? 2015, you have 7.5% growth, China and Asia together around 6%. You have 2% growth, United States, 0 growth, Europe. From 7 to 0, in few years, you have an enormous difference. And even from 2 to 6, you have an enormous difference. But think it over. The world is changing so deeply that it's not only Asia that is moving. In spite of everything, what happened, and in spite of any common opinion, Africa, since 7 years, not since 30 years like Asia, but since 6 or 7 years is growing not so bad. Now, in 2015, between 4 and 5 years. Don't think that Africa is a wealthy continent, please, because it's starting from such a low level of wealth that is still very, very, very poor, with a lot of problems from the demographic aspect. Africa now is 1 billion people. In one generation will be 2 billion people. And if you think that is really an enormous change, to give you one example, the median age of Germany or Italy, median means that you have as many people older than as many people younger of an age. In Germany and Italy is around 40, 43, 44 years. In Mali is 18 years. You can't believe what this means, that there is an increase in population and an enormous young age, let's say, proportion. And then it's a complete change in the future structure. This in a framework in which the world of today, you have, I repeat, still US first economy, probably overcome in absolute terms by China in 10 years' time, but please, China inhabitants are 4 or 5 times more than the Americans, and so even in 10 years' time, the average income will be 4 times higher in the United States than in China. But the trend is clear that it's changing. And then you have the so-called BRICS, China, India, Brazil, Russia, and new other regional power. Turkey, for example, is a new protagonist of the world. And so this is a complete change in our society. And clearly, in this framework, the world economy, the world capitalistic economy, let's say Western economy, went into a deep crisis, the longest crisis after the war. We never had in Europe and even in the United States such a long period of slow or negative growth. It never happened in history. And now the United States are coming out, Europe slower to come out, will be out, I think, in 1 year time, not less, and with a slow rate of growth. And, everybody thinks that even the quality of the development will be different. And honestly, my dear students, I am not sure, because everybody during the crisis was talking about the necessity of reform of the banking system, of the capitalistic system, of speculation, of the international links. everybody was convinced, and Obama, first of all, was really stating that the country needed change, but I don't see any major change. Speculation coming back, not very different from before. The banking system is not changing a lot, and so the rate of uncertainty that we had in the system a few years ago will, in my opinion, not be impossible to be repeated in the next future. And second, we had another major change in the world that will influence the future development. Everywhere in the world, we have had one generation of increasing injustice, increasing social injustice. If you take, after the war from 1950 to 1980s, the income justice was improving. There were less difference between wealthy and poor. Starting from 1980 to now, there is an increasing difference between wealthy and poor. And I stress this aspect because this is the reason of many financial crises. Because we live in a contradiction. This is not only in the capitalistic country, this is in China too, this is in India too. In the world, we had an improvement, a better situation in this, only in Brazil in the last 10 years, because there were subsidies to the poorest family, and in the Scandinavian countries in Europe. In everywhere, we had an increase in the difference in income. But this is not only a moral, an ethical problem. This is also an economic problem, because we think that an increase of demand is needed. But how can you increase demand if you have a decrease of the income of the families? We live in a very contradictory situation. We ask people to buy more and we pay people less. And this, can go on. And this problem, interest speculation, and this contradiction between purchasing power and production are the real contradiction in which you will live more and more in the future. And the consequence will be that more and more in many countries there will be the problem of unemployment, because this change is mixed with new technologies that are labor saving, and so this problem of a general peace will be complicated by these economic problems. And why this trend? This trend is strictly linked with some characteristics of the contemporary democracy, in which when you mention taxation, you lose elections. And so more and more the manifesto that you have in many countries only, let us decrease taxation, in spite of the global political consequence of that. Clearly, I was telling you of the different growth, and how China is rising till the possibility of reaching the same GDP of US in 10 years. This is also because China avoided any big military confrontation. China was not, and Asian countries were not in Iraq, were not in Afghanistan, were not in all. They are not in Syria. They are not in all the conflicts, and second, Asia started, and this is very, very important, a new strategy in order to guarantee the future of the people for food, energy, and raw materials. This is a completely new asset of the world. Chinese, Indian, and also Vietnamese, the lower dimension, demand is completely changing the price of inputs in the world production. And clearly this is the reason, one of the main reasons of the Africa rise. But this is changing also foreign policy, because where do you find food, raw materials and energy is clear where they are, they exist. And so mainly Africa and Latin America. So we have this new balance moving to the Africa and Latin America. But you know, history changes every year, you know, and we had a major change in the last 3 years that nobody has forecast. That seems a technical change only, but it's a great change that is called shale energy. Shale, that is oil and shale gas, let's say oil and gas taken by science with new technology. And this is, it came out in the United States in such a fantastic dimension in few years that is still maybe change in the reverse direction what happened in the world. And you now, United States, that were obsessed by the necessity of buying energy and by being leaders in the Middle East policy, now they are almost self-sufficient in energy. And even more important politically, they already now don't need Middle East energy. The African producing energy is sufficient. So you understand how this will change the future balance in the world and will modify the political goals of the great countries. Clearly it meets with the Chinese policy in Africa I mentioned before. In this moment, China is the only country that in Africa is making a continental strategy. France, UK, United States. France is concentrated, of course, on previous French-speaking countries. United Kingdom the same. United States, especially with the West African countries. China opened diplomatic relation with 50 or 51, I don't remember well, 51 on 54 African countries. And is doing a completely continental policy, changing totally the terms of power of the continent. And so you see how wavy is international policy today with contradictory movements, but very, very strong movements. And, you know, we now live in another very important difference. Not only you had completely change inside Mediterranean countries, that Egypt, Libya, Tunisia, what is generally called the African Spring. But you have a complete turmoil even in the sub-Saharan area, in which now I have to take care, some responsibility for United Nations, in which there is another change in world history, that is the role of terrorists. In all the conflicts I mentioned before, you found different interests. Let's say in Iraq, you had United States, UK, Italy and Spain from one side, France, Germany, Russia from the other, and China from the other side. The same you see in Syria, Russia and the United States. When you analyze what is happening now in the conflict in sub-Saharan area, you have not this difference. It's the first time in the post-war period in which, because of the terrorism, you have a completely common view of all the members of the Security Council. You have not, on the problem of sub-Saharan area, United States, China, Russia, UK, France, all agree because of the common fear. How long this will go on? What will happen? Will this be enough to control terrorism? Will terrorism still spread after what happened in Afghanistan and in sub-Saharan Africa? It's difficult to forecast, but this is another step in changing the world. And in this picture, clearly now you have a new phase of history. What I told before is already existing. Let's say now we have in a complex, multipolar situation of the world, in which in different roles you have many protagonists, not only one as you had in the past. But I want to give one moment to what I call the ASEAN cluster. Let's say the new economic phenomenon of the world. It's not China only, it's not Japan, it's not Korea, it's not Vietnam, but all together. What is interesting for a scholar is that you have a clear contradiction in Asia. You have many tensions among the countries, but you have an economic reality that is becoming more and more common. Now I can, in spite of the Pacific problem, in spite of the islands tension, it's amazing that there is more and more an Asian economy. And when you have an earthquake in Japan, thousands of Chinese factories are obliged to stop because they lack of semi-products that are necessary to produce. And if you look, cross investments are more and more Asian, took investment to Vietnam, First is Hong Kong, but Hong Kong, what is Hong Kong? It's China. Then you have Singapore, then you have South Korea, then you have Taiwan, and you have really something that is changing the world. Will be peaceful, will be not peaceful. This is the great dilemma. But clearly, from the economic point of view, this is bringing to peace, in theory. This is bringing to interdependence, and any political decision that will go against that will bring a price. you know, because this is something that is working. But, you know, of course, as a European, I know that this will also change Europe, you know. It's such a big force that will change Europe, but it will change the world. I give you only one example, and I want to be brief because otherwise I contradict myself. February last year, President Obama was receiving the managers of CEO and other managers of Apple computers, you know, and of course he asked about the company. They explained that all the assembly is done in China by a big company called Foxconn, and 250,000 workers of Foxconn are working for Apple. And the managers, just to be kind with the president, they told, oh, President, but it's not so important. The value added of this assembly is only $10 or less for the iPhone, and $15 for the iPad. So it's not such a big change. Well, the president had answered, why you don't bring, if it's not important, the assembly line to California? And the answer was absolutely unexpected. The answer was because it is impossible. Because the flexibility of the ASEAN cluster, the interaction between suppliers and demand, and how they translate software into hardware in very short time is not possible even in the United States. So this what means, this is only an example, but it means that in Asia you have not only a quantitative change, but you have also a quality change that is also changing the wage and salaries in China, and that will change competition in the future even more than now. So this is clearly an enormous change. Well, I was going on more than half an hour, and I did not mention Europe. You know, I shall do it now, because Europe is still number one with the United States in GDP, number one in industrial production, number one in export. So Europe exists, you know, and I think that even on any macroeconomic point of view, Europe is more, let's say, sound, healthy than the United States. The United States deficit is around 9%. European euro area is 4%. And crisis started in the United States, not in Europe. But now Europe is bringing the consequence of that. As I told you before, zero growth, and even in 2015. Why that? Why? And this is my last message that I give you, because even if you have a sound, healthy economy, if you have not a political situation that takes quick decision, you lose ground. And Europe is in a very delicate moment in which we did a lot. You know, don't forget, you that are studying diplomacy, that the European Union has been the most important achievement in world politics in the second part of last century and in the first 10 years of this century. Europe, we changed the nature of the state. If you think to the foundation of the state after the Westphalian change, the state is based on two pillars, the army and the currency. If you have a common currency and not anymore a national currency, you change the nature of the state. And Europe has done a lot, not only a trade agreement, not only flow investments, but more and more stronger political decision. But this, this change made in peaceful way is difficult. Keeps a lot of time and needs an agreement of all the countries. And so Europe is the delicate moment in which I think we are going in the right direction that nobody has done in the world. We are clearly leading the change and helping the future peace, leading the change from a nationalistic concept of the state to a cooperational concept of it. But this is a long way, a difficult way, and so we shall complete this only in the future. Don't think that Europe will go in disarray. The euro will go on. The Europe after the crisis of last summer will still be among the protagonists of the world economy. And so in this pluralistic world, Europe is there. But in the end of this, let's say, picture of the world, you clearly understand that because of the pluralistic, of the multipolar world, you should need an authority in the world. We should need United Nations or, a supranational authority more than in any other time, because there are many players. And I'm sorry to give you the message that is not the case now. It's not the case, The great powers, all of them, they don't push to recognize United Nations as a referee, as, a power regulating the power in the world. And this has also the consequence that it's very difficult to make the great reforms that we should make. For example, the monetary system now should be renewed. It was decided in 1944 and it was decided in 1944, remember, during the war, and it was done inside the United States in the conference of Bretton Woods, because the United States was the only country in which you could do that, was the only power not invaded, and they imposed a new monetary order. Clearly now we should reform, adapting the rules to the multipolarity of the world. And but there is no authority that is able to do that. You will listen, you will read in all the people before the G20. You will read G20 will make a great progress in the direction of an international agreement, monetary agreement, in order to regulate the financial transaction of the world. Don't trust it, because now, in this moment, this will not come, for a very simple reason. The United States are so well placed that they don't want to change the system. China doesn't want to change it because the change in China will be better off if the change will be made in the future when the country is more prepared and stronger in order to have more power to do it. So, and this is the end of my message, we are in a pluralistic world with many players and so full of potential new energies, but we are without a world referees to do that. And so we need a lot of wisdom, we need a lot of self-control in all the problems, from the Pacific Island problems to the problems of Middle East and energy. We shall have in front of us a delicate period in which we must use wisdom of course, as I told you, we should need also some superior authority, but it's not, I cannot tell you that this will come soon. It will need a lot of time and a lot of patience. So, my dear young students, it's up to you to work in the direction, in the correct direction, to clearly understand that this complex world will need understanding, goodwill, openness, and even more the necessity of thinking that different systems can live together. That we shall never get the peace that we want and that we need to achieve. Thank you.
Câu hỏi.
We take 3 questions and then answer the other 3. Okay. Nobody wants?
Thank you, President Romano Prodi, for the inspiring speech. So I am sure that the audience here has relied as well as consolidated knowledge about the importance of politics and peace in our age of globalizations.
Yeah, and now to continue, the students ourselves will have a great opportunity to exchange more of our cultural values and our point of view through a session called Question and Answer Session. It is your time now.
And now I would like to invite Dr. Nguyễn Cát Ngọc, Vice Dean of the Faculty of International Politics and Diplomacy, to be the coordinator for the Q&A sessions.
Hi everyone. Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Prodi, for a very great speech, which covers so many important issues in our international relations today. And now it's a Q&A session, and we have about 1 hour. So we finish at about 4:30. So please take this golden opportunity to ask Mr. Prodi as many questions as possible. Question, please, students. Yes. Can you? Yeah, we take about 3 questions, and then, Mr. Prodi give answers.
Your name, speak loud and clear, please.
Name first. Yeah.
Hello everybody. Hello President and Prime Minister Romano Prodi. I am Uwe Morawetz. I'm come from class KT3S8. And I have a question about the problem of Korea. So I want to know about your opinion about the problem in Korea when the relationship between the North and the South is more and more serious.
Korea. Okay. Go on, please. Second question.
Glory will give the answers. Okay, one more question, please. No? Okay.
Thank you. Well, that was a very great speech, Mr. Prodi. And I would like to ask you something. Would you mind sharing with us your view on China's increasingly hostile and aggressive attitude in the South Sea? Because do you view this as their own will, or is it a sort of situations in which they cannot protect or do anything against because they have to protect their newly established image in the world? And do you think that they will cease their hostility in the South Sea, or especially towards us, Vietnam? Thank you.
You take any more question?
Excuse me. Can you say the question again, please? Can you say again? We don't catch it.
I'm really sorry, I'll be brief. Would Mr. Prodi share with us his view on China's hostility and aggressiveness in the South Sea, especially towards Vietnamese, peninsula?
Yeah, thank you.
I answer to this question and then you stay there.
Answer first, then my turn.
Well, do it.
So first of all, I'd like to say that it's a great honor for me to be sitting here and to listen to your wonderful speech. And secondly, I'd like to say that I'm deeply sorry for bringing the following matter up. In your speech, you have briefly mentioned about the EU, the European crisis, but without any detailed specification about your country, Italy, even though your country, together with Portugal, Spain and Greece, forms the 4 leading countries in the crisis. So, moreover, your country, Italy, is still currently, as far as I know, in electoral stalemate, means that you do not have a government yet. So this leads to my questions that what are your thoughts and what's your solution for this current political as well as economical instability in Italy, given the fact that you are a former Prime Minister? Thank you very much.
Okay. Look, clearly, the North and South Korea problem is going on since decades with increasing tension, and I don't underestimate it, because you can never underestimate a problem when there is a nuclear weapon. Clearly, the, let's say, potential of the North Korean nuclear weapon is not comparable to the American or to the Russian, and probably there is inside it a lot of propaganda, but is still a danger, and it's one of the problems that is so difficult to tackle, because now North Korea is practically alone in its own policy. To increase sanction is like killing people sometimes, it's having such a consequence. So we have this waving policy that is going on since years and years. from tough sanction to bring some relief goods, and then sanction and relief goods. This is clearly a signal that is very difficult to elaborate a policy. And there was a hope with the changing of the leaders recently of a new North Korean policy, but now the message is that nothing is changing. So of course, you understand that I am not answering to your question, because I think that in this moment nobody is taking the decision of military action or taking the decision to go to the sanction till the end of looking millions of people dying. And so my thinking is that in the foreseeable future we shall go on with the discussion with an uncertain outcome. Of course, I do hope that some wisdom will prevail. I do hope that the deep sufferance of a people will be listened, will make consequences. Till now, I don't see any concrete message in this direction. This is a non-answer, but it's an honest answer, because I think that this is the situation. Second question and fourth, the second I answer together on the second question, European debt crisis, and the fourth question concerning Italy. I do a complete, let's say, a complex and unique answer. Debt crisis. Look, I told you before that the macro economy of Europe is much healthier than the American one. The average debt of the euro area is 4%. Is nothing compared to the American 9%. The situation is that in Europe we made the great achievement of a common currency, but we didn't make the necessary parallel achievement of common fiscal policy that is necessary to accompany the monetary policy. You will ask me why you have done this mistake. Because I was president of the European Commission, I was, I was discussing this, and I was telling you in my long and deep conversation with the European leaders, starting from the former German Chancellor Helmut Kohl, who was the leading, let's say, protagonist of the area. As an economist, I told him so many times, we have to accompany the monetary policy with a coordination of the general economic policy. And I also had many troubles, because I called the Stability Pact, that was the pact shaping the euro, I called it stupid, and it was a very tough expression, because I was meaning that you couldn't have a monetary union without a fiscal union. But the wise answer of all the politicians was, look, we did the first step, and the other step will follow, as in democracy you go on step by step. But what happened? The history changed, and Europe, that was in the moment of great solidarity, changed because of new populistic parties, because of fear of competition, fear of China, fear of immigration, and so the economic agreement have not yet been taken, and so we have left with the monetary union without the pillars. So the disequilibrium among the different European countries, more from Germany and the other countries, have increased time by time till the deep Greek crisis. The Greek crisis was a small crisis, but as it happens many times in democracy, the solution was delayed because there were elections, in this case in Germany. And so the small problem delayed, it became a big problem. And then the infection passed through Spain, and then Portugal, Ireland, and then Italy, you know. But last summer, the European Central Bank has taken a decision that will put the euro in safe area forever, with difficult management problem, with difficult decision to take, but nobody thinks now if there are not new events on the euro collapse, because the central bank has decided that the central bank can intervene in helping the weakest European states. So don't think that the euro will disappear, and also in the exchange rate of exchange in the world, the euro is very strong. In my opinion, is too strong, not too weak, you know, and we have difficult to export because there is a too strong euro. Italy is a special case because the Italian budget is very sound. We have a deficit that is a little more than 2%, but we have a deficit, a debt, not a deficit, a debt, outstanding debt that is very high. And so if there is an increase of rate of interest, we have to pay, we have a very heavy burden because of the debt of the past generations. And so it's a very delicate situation, but it's manageable. I've been in my two governments, I decreased the rate of the debt 10% each of the two governments. So it's possible in a normal situation to do that as a normal policy without killing the country. But now we have election with an uncertain result. And so in this moment there are a lot of question marks whether Italy can have a policy that will tackle the debt. Well, in my opinion, there is nothing that cannot be in some way tackled. Don't forget that in European democracy, many times to have a new government you need time. Belgium was without a government for 1 year and a half, 1 year and a half. And so you must give to Italy that we had election a couple of weeks ago. You must give time to Italy to make the necessary negotiation to shape the new government. My forecast is that this will be probably possible, or as it happened in Greece, there will be new election. My option is that it's more probable that we shall have a government, but in any case, the economic fundamentals are not so serious to justify a fear. China behavior and the Pacific area behavior. Look, I'm not Chinese, I am not Vietnamese, I am not Japanese, so I look this just outside observer, and I find that there is a terrible difference between the reality of the problem and the tensions behind it. Let's say the problem of the island is a normal problem. of defining border that in a normal situation is solved in, let's say, few days. And this is a real problem because there are political tensions inside in the area that are not related to islands. Political tensions that are related to the future, let's say, settlement with the power of the area. I can't tell you which is the solution. I simply tell you that you can understand the greatness, the fantastic achievement of Europe, that in a similar case we decided to work together and to shape a new reality with the European Union. The case like that cannot be solved with a war or with an increasing tension. They must be solved only with a global agreement. I stress the economic interdependence, not only by chance, but in order to tell you that the reality must bring to look for an agreement. You know, the tension between Japan and China are separate, are big, are terrible, but not bigger than the tension that were existed between France and Germany. We have overcome them. There's only one way to solve the problem, to look for a long-term agreement. This is the only way. Otherwise, you know, you will find another problem. It will not be the island, it will be something else. You know. But the problem, you have to face the political problem, that a confrontation will be tragic for all the area, and not only because we are here for the International Peace Foundation, but because of the reality of things. There must be a real necessity of going around the table and discuss, maybe for years and years and find a solution, because otherwise you will stop growth and will be a tragedy for Vietnam, for China, for Japan, for Korea. Their growth is interdependent, and there is no other solution than patience, and let's say negotiation.
Yeah, we should take another 3 questions, and please say the names before you say the questions. Yeah, please.
Hello everybody, HP. And my question is that recently that Italy have any policies to strengthen cultural diplomacies in Vietnam?
Look, if I answer you that I am unable to answer to your question, what do you mean?
Yeah, one more please.
2, other 2.
It's about the internationalization of renminbi, and what do you think about that? Do you think China will do this slowly? What is in the 52 years? What do you think about this procedure?
Thank you. Next, please. Vote, please.
Paper under Vietnam Unity Apparel. I have one question for you. Recently, just a few days ago,
the new Pope was elected. He is Argentina, and he is called the Pope of the Poor. And as you said in your keynote speech, you say the crisis is the crisis of the poor, because it is caused by the injustice. It means that the poor don't have money, and also plus the tax policy. And so I mean that when the new Pope is elected, and the Christian accounts for 1.2 million people. So do you think that with the new Pope, will there be any change in the economic situation for the whole world? And will the world will it contribute for the world to overcome the crisis? Thank you so much.
Excuse me?
Okay.
I think we had a question already.
Let us.
Can I?
Yeah.
Well, mine is very short and simple. The European countries have been increasingly interested about the situation in the South China Sea in the past months. So, if you would be so kind to let us know that how could the European Union in general and Italy in particular would contribute to the peace and stability in the region. Thank you very much.
The last three questions. Will it be the future of it? What could happen? Look, because of if I read the last economic Chinese decision, there is no alternative to the convertibility of the RMB. Because China has more and more companies who want to become multinational. The relation between China and the international financial system through Hong Kong and direct are more and more important. And so I see that this is the direction. But a long time will be needed, because you need a complete change of the Chinese banking system, absolutely total. And this is the slowest, let's say, change of Chinese economy that I see. The banking system is still an instrument of the government, and so is unavoidable to go in this direction, but will be a long way, because really you need to reform all the credit system. You need to have semi-private banking. You need to have clear rules and rules of lending and borrowing that are still in making. So direction clear, timing long. Second was the second was the European Union. The second was poverty, the Argentinian Pope, and that. Look, is very early to tell which will be the influence worldwide, but clearly there is a completely new hierarchy of values. The speech of the Pope, even yesterday morning, I don't even read in the papers because I had only in my internet, from Italy. Even the speech of yesterday, the problem of social justice was top. And because this is direct to 1.2 billion Catholic people will have a lot of influence. I think how deep, how profound in the governments really is not easy to tell you. But before I mentioned looking at history, how the difference and the injustice is increasing. And I have to add that in the last years, this is starting to bring, deep thinking, to think that this will even be negative for development. And you have a lot of people that is against the common shared idea that welfare state is against growth. So I think that this declaration of the new Pope will help this change even in the political decision. How fast, how quick, I don't know, but certainly will be influential. Last question about it was. The last question, it's very peculiar because I have to confess that the European influence in South Asian dispute will be very inexistent, let's say. Europe now in foreign policy is divided, is a great giant in economy, is not a protagonist in politics, because we need reforms to do that. We need the end of unanimity in decision. And so my answer is that we can help in specific cases just expressing goodwill, but Europe is not in a condition to take a role of mediator. This is the reality of the moment. Sorry to give this as last question, but today we must use a language of truth. And so this is the reality of today European common foreign policy. It's not existing, it's not expressing the real European strength. Thank you so much, and see you again.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prodi, for your insight knowledge on various issues. And thank you for coming here and giving us presentation. And we hope you enjoy your stay in Vietnam, and we all wish to see you again. And once again, thank you very much, Mr. Prodi, the former Italian Prime Minister, and his wife, and the International Peace Foundation, Ministry of Education and Training. And now our meeting has come to an end, and the President of the Diplomatic Academy of Vietnam would like to invite you, Mr. Prodi, his wife, and all the distinguished guests to have photos taken at the steps of the second floor building. Yeah. Once again, thank you very much for being here. Yeah, please.
Ở dưới còn chỗ này.
Chị vào trong luôn kìa. Đứng lên bậc nào ơi.
Cho ông thì đứng dưới một tí rồi ông kia thì khuất.
Ê, cho ông đứng dưới. Cho
ông cho chị áo chỗ. Chỗ chị áo. Đâu. Cũng em ơi. Yes.
Ok. Đầu nào tay nào. Please. 1, 2, 3 again. 1, 2, 3.
Ổn quá.
Rồi, đâu.
Bỏ máy em ơi.
Còn tự sướng nữa hả?
Yes, thank you.
Kia đâu chặt.
Let's